A lunch break that should have been ordinary became the breaking point of my entire life. 47 minutes away from my desk. That's all it took for everything to unravel. An unfair decision, a workplace betrayal, and $1 million secret I'd stumbled upon weeks earlier suddenly collided. They thought firing me would bury the truth. They thought wrong. Because when you push someone who has nothing left to lose, you better be prepared for what they might unleash. My name is Melissa Carter, and for the past 3 years, I've been just another face in the administrative finance department at Westford Dynamics. 32 years old, single, drowning in student loans. The typical millennial story, right? Every morning at 7:45, I'd push through the glass doors of our building on Market Street, the cheap coffee from the lobby cart already cooling in my hand. The familiar symphony would greet me, keyboards clicking, the ancient printer on the third floor wheezing through another paper jam. Phones ringing with that specific urgency that only exists in mid-sized companies trying to act bigger than they are. Westford Dynamics specialized in data services and logistics. Boring stuff to most people. But it paid my rent on a studio apartment in Queens and kept the student loan sharks at bay. My desk sat in the corner of the 4th floor, strategically positioned where I could see both the elevator and Harold Whitman's office. Harold, our department head, ruled his kingdom with the kind of cold efficiency that made you question if he had a pulse. But the job was stable, or so I thought. I'd always been the reliable one. First in, last out. The kind of employee who actually read the company handbook and followed protocols to the letter. My coworkers would joke about it. There goes Melissa, color-coding the expense reports again. But that attention to detail? That's what made me good at my job. It's also what made me notice things others missed. My personal life was less organized. There was Derek, who I'd been seeing for 8 months, though seeing might be too strong a word. We grabbed dinner when he wasn't traveling for work, which was becoming less and less frequent. My refrigerator held takeout containers in various stages of decay, and my kitchen table had become a permanent extension of my home office, covered in spreadsheets I'd review after hours. The truth is, I poured everything into my work because it was the one thing I could control. Every reconciled account, every balanced budget, every perfectly formatted report. These small victories kept me going. They made me feel like I was building towards something, even if I couldn't quite articulate what that something was. My morning routine never varied. Arrive, check emails, review the previous day's transactions, prep the daily financial reports for Harold. The mundane repetition was almost meditative. I knew every quirk of our accounting software, every shortcut in our database system. I could spot a discrepancy in a 1,000-line spreadsheet faster than our automated systems could flag it. But Westford Dynamics wasn't the corporate paradise the recruiting brochures promised. Beneath the "we're a family" rhetoric and casual Fridays lurked something darker. Office politics ran deeper than the Hudson. Alliances shifted like sand. And then there was Samantha Reyes, my colleague who'd started 6 months after me, but somehow always managed to be in Harold's office, laughing at his non-jokes, volunteering for his pet projects. Samantha had perfected the art of appearing helpful while simultaneously undermining everyone around her. "Oh, Melissa, you look tired. Working late again? You know, delegation is a skill too," she'd say with that practiced smile that never reached her eyes. But I'd learned to navigate around her, keeping my head down, doing my work, believing that competence would eventually triumph over politics. How naive I was. Looking back, the signs were there. The hushed conversations that stopped when I walked by, the way Harold's jaw would tighten whenever I submitted certain reports, the subtle suggestions that maybe I was too detail-oriented or needed to see the bigger picture. But I dismissed these red flags, convinced that my work would speak for itself. That morning, the last normal morning, I remember everything with crystalline clarity. The smell of burnt coffee from the break room, the flickering fluorescent light above the copier that maintenance had been fixing for 2 months. The way my computer fan whirred as I pulled up the quarterly logistics contracts. Even then, something felt off, like the air pressure had dropped before a storm. But I ignored my instincts, adjusted my desk calendar to Tuesday, and began what I thought would be just another day at Westford Dynamics. The cracks in Westford Dynamics ran deeper than the stained carpet in the break room. 3 weeks before that fateful lunch break, I'd started noticing patterns that didn't add up. It began innocently enough, a vendor payment that seemed to loop through 2 unnecessary subsidiaries before reaching its destination. Then another. And another. Working in administrative finance meant I had access to most of the company's financial movements, though Harold kept the high-level accounts locked behind his executive credentials. Still, what I could see painted an interesting picture. Transport contracts with inflated mileage, service fees that doubled between initial quotes and final invoices. Small enough to avoid triggering automatic audits, but frequent enough to add up to serious money. The office culture made investigating these irregularities feel like walking through a minefield. Harold Whitman ran our department with the warmth of a Norwegian winter. He'd appear behind you without warning, reading over your shoulder, his coffee breath mixing with expensive cologne. Focus on your assigned tasks. Carter, he'd say whenever I raised questions about discrepancies. We don't pay you to play detective. But the detective work chose me. Every spreadsheet I opened revealed new questions. Why were we paying premium rates to Bradley Logistics when 3 other vendors offered better prices? Why did certain shipments get rerouted through facilities that added 2 days to delivery times? The numbers whispered secrets I couldn't quite decode. Samantha Reyes, meanwhile, had evolved from irritating colleague to something more predatory. She'd started scheduling alignment meetings with Harold right after I submitted my reports, emerging with that satisfied smile of someone who'd just shared a particularly juicy piece of gossip. Her desk, strategically positioned between mine and the elevator, meant she could monitor everyone's comings and goings. You know, Melissa, she said one afternoon, perching on my desk like we were girlfriends. Harold really values team players. People who understand that sometimes the bigger picture matters more than tiny details. Her manicured nails tapped against my monitor, right over a questionable invoice I'd been reviewing. Just some friendly advice. The friendly advice felt more like a warning. Other colleagues had started treating me differently, too. Jason Miller from IT, who used to joke around during coffee breaks, now barely made eye contact. Rebecca from HR would quickly close her screen whenever I walked past. The paranoid part of my brain wondered if I was imagining things. But the spreadsheet analyst in me knew. Patterns don't lie. One evening, working late as usual, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. A series of transactions, all authorized by Harold, all witnessed by Samantha. Creating what looked like a phantom vendor, Clearwater Solutions. The company existed on paper, had a legitimate tax ID, but the payment routing led to an offshore account. We're talking about nearly $1 million over 18 months, disguised as Logistics Optimization Consulting. I printed everything, my hands shaking as the printer spit out page after page of evidence. But evidence of what, exactly? Embezzlement? Fraud? Or just creative accounting that skirted the edge of legality? I needed more information, but every query I ran felt like painting a target on my back. The next morning, Harold called an unexpected department meeting. I want to address some concerns about efficiency, he began, his gray eyes scanning the room before landing on me. It's come to my attention that some team members are spending excessive time on tasks outside their scope. This kind of curiosity is disruptive to our workflow. Samantha nodded enthusiastically, her eyes never leaving my face. Absolutely. We should all remember that trust is the foundation of our team. Questioning everything creates a toxic environment. Trust. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. Trust was what allowed Clearwater Solutions to drain money from the company. Trust was what kept everyone's eyes closed while Harold and Samantha played their game. I kept my discoveries to myself, storing copies of everything on a personal flash drive I hid in my apartment. Call it paranoia, or call it intuition. But something told me I'd need insurance. The tension in the office grew thicker with each passing day. Harold started requiring detailed time logs for every task. Samantha began copying herself on all my emails. For transparency, they were closing in, trying to find a reason to push me out. What they didn't know was that I'd already found their $1 million secret. What I didn't know was how far they'd go to keep it buried. Tuesday, March 15th. The date is seared into my memory like a brand. It started like any other day. Email reviews, invoice processing, the usual dance of corporate bureaucracy. By 11:45, my stomach was growling, reminding me I'd skipped breakfast again. I glanced at the clock, saved my work, and grabbed my purse. Heading to lunch, I announced to no one in particular, though I noticed Samantha's head snap up from her screen. She gave me that practiced smile and returned to her work. Or so I thought. The day was surprisingly warm for March, and I decided to walk to the sandwich shop 3 blocks away instead of eating another sad desk salad. The line was longer than usual, some corporate lunch rush from the bank next door. And what should have been a 15-minute grab-and-go turned into 25 minutes of waiting. Then my card declined. Not insufficient funds, just the chip reader being temperamental again. Another 5 minutes while they ran it manually. I checked my phone, 12:47 p.m. Technically, lunch was until 1:00 p.m. And the walk back would take 10 minutes. Cutting it close, but still within bounds. I half-jogged back, my sensible heels clicking against the pavement, sandwich bag swinging at my side. The elevator seemed to take forever. When the doors finally opened on the 4th floor at 12:58 p.m., I felt a mixture of relief and mild annoyance at my own anxiety. I was back before 1:00. Everything was fine, except it wasn't. I'd barely set my sandwich on my desk when Margaret from HR appeared at my cubicle. Not email, not a phone call, in person. My stomach dropped. "Melissa, could you come with me, please? Bring your personal belongings." My personal. What's going on? Please, just come with me. The walk to HR felt like a death march. Coworkers averted their eyes. Someone, I think it was Jason, started to say something, then thought better of it. The sandwich I'd waited so long for sat abandoned on my desk, still in its bag. Harold was already in the conference room, along with Tom Brennan, the senior HR director I'd maybe spoken to twice in 3 years. A manila folder lay closed on the table between them. Samantha stood by the window, arms crossed, wearing an expression of practiced concern. "Sit down, Melissa," Tom said, his voice professionally neutral. I sat. My hands were shaking, so I clasped them in my lap. Harold spoke first. "It's been brought to our attention that you've been consistently violating company policy regarding break times. Today's extended lunch break, nearly 70 minutes, is just the latest in a pattern of behavior." 70 minutes? The words came out as a whisper. "I left at 11:45 and was back at—" "You were seen leaving at 11:47, Samantha interjected, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "And you returned at 12:58. That's over an hour." "That's not— I announced when I was leaving. It was 11:45. The sandwich shop was crowded. The card reader—" Furthermore, Harold continued as if I hadn't spoken. "You've been using company time for unauthorized activities, accessing files outside your department, running reports that aren't part of your job description." Tom opened the manila folder. "We're terminating your employment effective immediately. Security will escort you to your desk to collect your personal items." The room tilted. "You're firing me for taking a lunch break?" "For a pattern of policy violations," Tom corrected. "This is all documented. You'll receive your final paycheck by mail, including unused vacation days." "This is about Clearwater Solutions, isn't it?" The words tumbled out before I could stop them. The room went silent. Harold's face darkened. Samantha's concerned expression flickered, just for a second, replaced by something colder. "I have no idea what you're talking about," Harold said slowly. "And making wild accusations won't change anything. Tom, I think we're done here." Security, when had security arrived, stood by the door. The walk back to my desk was surreal. Colleagues pretended to be absorbed in their screens. I grabbed my coffee mug, a framed photo of my parents, my emergency phone charger. The sandwich still sat there, mocking me. $70 in student loan payments, wasted on a lunch I'd never eat. "I'm sorry," someone whispered as I passed. Rebecca from HR. Of all people. But her eyes said more than sorry. They said, "Be careful." The security guard walked me all the way to the street. My keycard was deactivated before the elevator reached the lobby. 3 years of perfect attendance, stellar reviews, and dedicated service, erased over a lunch break that ran 13 minutes over because of a broken card reader. But we all knew this wasn't about lunch breaks. This was about $1 million and how far people would go to keep their secrets buried. Standing on the sidewalk, holding my pathetic box of belongings, I felt something shift inside me. They thought they'd won. They thought firing me would make me disappear. Another casualty of corporate downsizing that no one would question. They were wrong. The first week after the firing, I couldn't get out of bed. The humiliation burned through me like acid. 3 years of perfect performance reviews, destroyed in 13 minutes. My savings account held exactly 1,847s, enough for maybe 1 month's rent if I ate nothing but ramen. The student loan payment was due in 10 days. Credit card minimum payments in 5. Derek's response to my termination was predictably lukewarm. "That sucks, babe," he'd said over the phone, the sounds of an airport lounge in the background. "Look, I'm boarding soon. We'll talk when I get back from Chicago, okay?" We wouldn't. I knew it, and I think he knew it too. When you're drowning, you learn quickly who's willing to throw you a rope and who's already sailing away. My studio apartment felt smaller with each passing day. The walls seemed to press in, especially at 3 a.m. when I'd jolt awake, my mind racing through bills and deadlines. I started the humiliating ritual of job applications, knowing that without a reference from Westford, my chances were slim. "Why did you leave your last position?" The question mocked me from every online form. By day 8, desperation had transformed into something else. Lying on my couch, staring at the water stain on my ceiling that looked vaguely like a map of Florida, I kept replaying that final meeting, Harold's practice speech, Samantha's perfectly timed interjections, the folder that was already prepared, waiting for me. They'd planned it, every detail orchestrated. But why? Why risk a wrongful termination lawsuit over some inflated invoices, unless it wasn't just about inflated invoices? I pulled out my laptop and the flash drive I'd hidden inside an old tampon box, the one place I figured no one would ever look if they searched my apartment. The Clearwater Solutions files bloomed across my screen. I'd been so focused on the what that I'd missed the when. The phantom vendor payments had started 18 months ago, but the suspicious invoice patterns, those went back only 6 months, which meant Harold and Samantha's scheme had evolved, grown. What started as skimming had become something much larger. I cross-referenced the dates with my saved emails. 6 months ago was when I'd first flagged discrepancies to Harold. 5.5 months ago was when Samantha suddenly became interested in being my friend. 5 months ago was when my access to certain financial systems was mysteriously restructured for efficiency. They'd been managing me, containing me, and when containment failed, they eliminated me. The anger that had been simmering beneath my despair finally boiled over. They'd stolen my job, my reputation, my stability, all to protect their $1 million theft. They'd gambled that I'd slink away, too broken and too poor to fight back. They'd gambled wrong. I started making lists, not the color-coded, perfectly formatted lists I used to make at Westford, but angry, desperate scrawls on whatever paper I could find, what I knew, what I could prove, what I needed to discover. The legality of recording conversations in New York, one-party consent, thank God. How whistleblower protections actually worked, whether the FBI or IRS would be more interested in Harold's creative accounting. My phone rang on day 10. Unknown number. "Melissa, it's Jason. From IT?" My heart jumped. "Jason, Don't say anything specific, just listen. Can you meet me at that terrible sports bar on 47th, the one nobody from work would ever go to? Tonight, 8 p.m.? The line went dead. I spent the rest of the day oscillating between hope and paranoia. Was this a trap? Was Harold trying to find out what I knew? Or was Jason exactly what I needed, an inside ally? At 7:45 p.m., I walked into Murphy's Last Stand, a dive bar that smelled like stale beer and broken dreams. Jason sat in the back corner, nervously peeling the label off a Budweiser. "You look like hell," he said when I sat down. "Unemployment isn't great for the complexion." He smiled weakly, then leaned forward. "They're scared, Melissa. Really scared. After you left, Harold had me wipe 3 servers. Not reformat, physically destroy them. Why are you telling me this? Because what they're doing, it's going to destroy the company. And despite what Harold thinks, I'm not stupid. I kept backups." He slid a flash drive across the sticky table. Everything from the past 2 years, including some very interesting emails between Harold and Samantha about restructuring assets for maximum efficiency. "Jason, this could get me fired. They're already planning to outsource IT. I've got 2 weeks. Max. Might as well go down swinging." He stood to leave, then paused. "There's something else. Rebecca from HR. She's been documenting every suspicious termination for the past year. You weren't the first, Melissa. Just the most obvious." After he left, I sat in that dingy bar, staring at the flash drive. This tiny piece of plastic and metal represented everything: vindication, justice, revenge, but also danger. Harold and Samantha had already proven how far they'd go to protect their secret. But sitting in my apartment, waiting for the eviction notice, wasn't living. It was just slow motion dying. They'd taken everything from me except my knowledge, my anger. And now, thanks to Jason, the ammunition I needed. The victim phase of my life was over. It was time to become something else. Jason's flash drive was a goldmine of corruption. I spent the next 3 days barely sleeping, fueled by cheap coffee and righteous fury, piecing together the full scope of Harold and Samantha's operation. What emerged was breathtaking in its audacity. Clearwater Solutions wasn't just a phantom vendor. It was the centerpiece of an elaborate scheme that had drained $1.2 million from Westford Dynamics over 18 months. The genius lay in its simplicity. Harold would approve inflated transportation contracts. Samantha would process them through Clearwater as consulting fees, and the money would disappear into an offshore account in the Caymans. The real transport companies got their standard rates. Clearwater got the difference, and the books balanced perfectly unless you knew exactly where to look. But knowing and proving were different beasts. I needed someone who understood the legal maze I was about to enter. That's when I remembered Rachel Monroe. I'd met Rachel 2 years ago at a women's networking event that I'd attended mainly for the free wine. She was fresh out of law school, working for a small firm that specialized in corporate whistleblower cases. We'd exchanged cards, followed each other on LinkedIn, and that was it. Now, desperate, I dug out her business card from my desk drawer. "Melissa Carter?" She sounded surprised when she answered. "I heard about Westford. Corporate terminations are brutal." "It wasn't just a termination. Rachel, can we meet?" We met at a coffee shop in Brooklyn, far from Manhattan's corporate surveillance. Rachel looked exactly as I remembered: sharp suit, sharper mind, and eyes that missed nothing. I laid out everything: the scheme, the evidence, my termination. She listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes in legal shorthand I couldn't decipher. "This is big," she finally said. "Really big, but also dangerous. These people have already shown they'll destroy careers to protect themselves. I don't have a career left to destroy." She studied me for a long moment. "Okay, here's the deal. My firm will take this on contingency. But I need more than just financial records. I need patterns, witnesses, a clear timeline. Can you get those?" "I can do better. I have an inside source." Jason proved invaluable. Through careful coordination, always meeting in person, never using phones or email, he fed me information. Harold was getting sloppy, paranoid. He'd started shredding documents that should have been archived. Samantha had been spotted at the bank 3 times in 1 week, always carrying locked briefcases. Then Rebecca reached out. Her message came through LinkedIn. Innocuous enough. Saw you're in transition. Coffee sometime? But when we met, she slid a folder across the table before even saying hello. 7 employees, she said quietly. All terminated in the last year. All had questioned financial discrepancies or had access to sensitive accounts. You were just the most recent. The folder contained termination records, each with its own fabricated reason: late arrivals, insubordination, policy violations. But the pattern was clear. Anyone who got too close to the truth was eliminated. Why are you helping me? I asked. Because I'm tired of processing termination paperwork for good people while criminals run the company. She paused. And because they're planning to pin the whole thing on you. What? Harold's been backdating documents, making it look like you authorized the Clearwater payments. If this comes out, you won't just be unemployed. You'll be in federal prison. The blood drained from my face. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about my freedom. Rachel went into overdrive when I told her, we need to move fast. The longer they have, the more they can fabricate. She started preparing a whistleblower complaint for the SEC while simultaneously reaching out to a contact at the FBI's white-collar crime division. But I wanted more than just legal justice. I wanted them to feel what I'd felt. That moment when your world collapses and you realize the people you trusted were the ones holding the demolition charges. That's when I discovered the shareholders' meeting. Westford Dynamics held quarterly presentations for major investors. The next one was in 2 weeks. All department heads would be there, including Harold. Samantha, as senior finance coordinator, would be presenting the quarterly numbers. It's perfect, I told Rachel. They'll be in front of everyone who matters. The board, the investors, even some press. You can't just walk in there, Melissa. You're a terminated employee. Security would stop you at the door. Not if I had an invitation. Jason's last gift was perhaps his greatest. As an administrator, he still had access to the email system for another 4 days. One carefully crafted email, sent from a board member's spoofed address, added me, Carter, financial consultant, to the attendee list. After this, I'm out, Jason said. They're already suspicious, but this should get you in the door. I spent the next week preparing, not just the evidence. Rachel helped me organize that into a devastating presentation, but myself. I bought a new suit with the last of my credit limit. I practiced my words in the mirror until they were perfect. I transformed my anger into something cold and precise, a surgical instrument rather than a club. The $1 million secret was about to become very, very public, and Harold and Samantha had no idea what was coming. The plan crystallized over 72 sleepless hours. Rachel and I transformed her tiny conference room into a war room, every surface covered with printed emails, financial records, and timelines. The evidence was damning, but evidence alone wouldn't be enough. I needed to orchestrate their downfall with the same precision they'd used to orchestrate mine. We have one shot at this, Rachel reminded me constantly. If they see you coming, they'll lock down everything, maybe even flee the country. She was right. Harold and Samantha had to believe they were safe until the very moment they weren't. That meant maintaining absolute silence while building a trap they couldn't escape. The first step was ensuring I could actually get into the shareholders' meeting. Jason's spoofed invitation was good, but I needed backup plans. That's where Rebecca proved invaluable again. She accidentally left her access badge in the bathroom the day before the meeting, texting me exactly where to find it. If electronic entry failed, I'd have physical access. Rachel, meanwhile, worked the legal angle. She'd already filed sealed whistleblower complaints with both the SEC and FBI. Time to be open the day after the meeting. If something happens to you, she said grimly, the authorities will still get everything. But I didn't want Harold and Samantha arrested quietly, processed through the system with expensive lawyers minimizing their crimes. I wanted them exposed, humiliated, their careful facades shattered in front of everyone who mattered. The presentation had to be perfect. Not a rambling accusation, but a methodical destruction. Rachel helped me structure it like a legal argument. Establish credibility, present evidence, demonstrate pattern, reveal motive, show damage. 5 minutes was all I'd have before security reacted. 5 minutes to destroy 2 careers and save myself from federal prison. I practiced relentlessly, in the shower, walking to the grocery store, in my dreams. Every word had to land perfectly. Every slide had to be devastating. Every second had to count. 3 days before the meeting, I did reconnaissance. The Westford Building's lobby was public access until the elevators. The meeting would be in the 20th floor conference center, a glass-walled showpiece designed to impress investors. Security would be present but minimal. After all, who would dare disrupt such a gathering? Then came an unexpected complication. Derek, of all people, called. "Mel, I heard you're planning something crazy," he said without preamble. "Harold's been asking about you, about us. Whether you've said anything to me." My blood chilled. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. We're over, remember?" "But Melissa, these people." Harold's connected. His brother-in-law is a federal judge. Samantha's father owns 3 companies that contract with Westford. You're playing with fire. They already burned me, Derek. What's left to lose? Your freedom? Your life? Just be careful. The warning should have scared me. Instead, it clarified something. Harold and Samantha weren't just criminals. They were connected criminals, protected by networks of privilege and power. The legal system might fail me even with perfect evidence. But public humiliation? That cuts through any amount of connection. Rachel made her own preparations. She reached out to a financial journalist she knew, dropping hints about something big happening at Westford's quarterly meeting. She couldn't give details, attorney-client privilege, but she could ensure someone with a camera would be present. The night before the meeting, I couldn't sleep. Every doubt crashed through my mind. What if security stopped me at the door? What if the presentation system failed? What if Harold had already prepared counter-accusations, painting me as a disgruntled employee seeking revenge? But then I remembered that manila folder, prepared before I'd even returned from lunch. The casual cruelty of destroying someone's livelihood over a 13-minute delay that wasn't even real. The 7 other employees tossed aside like garbage when they got too close to the truth. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about everyone Harold and Samantha had stepped on while climbing their corrupt ladder. I pulled up the Clearwater Solutions accounts one more time. $1.2 million stolen. Enough to pay off my student loans 40 times over. Enough to destroy a company's trust in its leadership. Enough to send people to federal prison for a very long time. Tomorrow, I would walk into that building as a nobody. A terminated employee with a box of belongings and a ruined reputation. But I would leave as something else entirely. A whistleblower, a truth teller, the woman who brought down Harold Whitman and Samantha Reyes. My phone buzzed. "Rachel. Final review tomorrow, 7 a.m., bring coffee. The good stuff, we've earned it." Then another text, this one from an unknown number. "They know you're coming. Be ready for anything. A friend." My hands shook as I set the phone down. Someone inside Westford was warning me, or threatening me. Either way, there was no backing out now. The presentation was loaded on 3 separate USB drives. The evidence was backed up in 4 different locations. Rachel had copies of everything. In 12 hours, I would either reclaim my life or lose it entirely. But at least I would go down fighting. Not fired over a fictional lunch break, but standing up to corruption nobody else had the courage to confront. I closed my laptop, set my alarm, and tried to prepare for the most important performance of my life. Tomorrow, the $1 million secret would finally see daylight. The 20th floor of Westford Dynamics had never felt so electric. I entered through the stairwell, Rebecca's badge working perfectly, my heart hammering against my ribs. The shareholders' meeting was already in session. Harold's voice droning through the glass walls about exceptional quarterly performance. I waited in the hallway, watching through the floor-to-ceiling windows. 43 people sat around the massive conference table, board members, major investors, 2 journalists Rachel had managed to alert. Harold stood at the podium, confident and commanding. Samantha sat to his right, laser pointer in hand, clicking through slides of fabricated success. At 10:47 a.m., during the transition between Harold's overview and Samantha's financial presentation, I walked in. The room turned. Harold's face went from confusion to recognition to pure panic in 3 seconds. "Security," he barked. But I was already at the auxiliary podium, USB drive sliding into the presentation system. "Good morning, board members and investors. I'm Melissa Carter, former administrative finance specialist, terminated for taking a 58-minute lunch break." My voice rang clear, steady. All those practice sessions paying off. "But I'm not here to discuss my termination. I'm here to discuss the $1.2 million that Mr. Whitman and Miss Reyes stole from this company." The room erupted, board members shouting questions, Harold rushing toward me. But the screen behind me had already changed. The Clearwater Solutions logo filling the wall. "Security is coming," Samantha hissed, but her voice wavered. "They'll want to see this too," I replied, clicking to the next slide. Bank records, transfer authorizations, the offshore account details. Clearwater Solutions, a phantom vendor created 18 months ago, existing only to funnel money from inflated transportation contracts into a Cayman Islands account. Harold had reached me now, grabbing for the laptop. "This woman is mentally unstable. She was terminated for cause. For questioning these very transactions." I sidestepped him, addressing the board directly. 7 employees terminated in the past year. All who discovered pieces of this scheme. Their files are in tab 3 of the package now being distributed. That was Rebecca's cue. She entered from the main door, wheeling a cart stacked with bound documentation, copies of everything. The security guards hesitated, recognizing her as HR staff. She began placing packets in front of each board member with clinical efficiency. "This is illegal." Samantha stood, her composure cracking. "You can't." "Page 47, I interrupted, clicking to an email screenshot. "Ms. Reyes instructing Mr. Whitman to, quote, handle the Carter problem before she becomes a bigger issue. Dated 1 week before my termination." The lead board member, Patricia Huang, raised her hand. The room quieted. "Continue." "Ms. Carter." Harold's face had gone gray. "Patricia, surely you can't believe—" "I believe in evidence, Harold. Continue. Ms. Carter." The next 3 minutes were surgical. Transaction after transaction, email after email. The pattern so clear that even a child could follow it. Harold and Samantha had grown greedy, sloppy, leaving digital fingerprints everywhere. "The FBI and SEC have been provided with complete copies of this evidence," I announced, noting how Samantha swayed on her feet. "Whistleblower complaints were filed 3 days ago." "You vindictive little—" Harold lunged forward, but 2 board members physically restrained him. "The truly tragic part," I continued, my voice now carrying 3 weeks of suppressed rage, "is that they were willing to frame me for their crimes. Pages 70 through 85 show backdated authorizations with my forged signature, uploaded to the system after my termination. The journalist in the corner was recording everything on his phone. Another was rapidly typing on her laptop. This would be front-page news by evening. Patricia Huang stood. "Mr. Whitman." "Ms. Reyes, you are immediately suspended, pending investigation. Security, please escort them from the building." "You can't do this." Harold struggled against the guards. "I built this department, my brother-in-law." "Your brother-in-law, the federal judge, will be very interested in maintaining distance from you," Patricia said coldly. She turned to me. "Ms. Carter, the board will need your full cooperation in the investigation." "You'll have it," I replied, then looked directly at Harold and Samantha. Every document, every email, every crime. Samantha was crying now, mascara streaming down her cheeks. Melissa, please, we can work something out. Like you worked out my termination, like you worked out framing me for federal crimes? I shook my head. The only thing we're working out is your prison sentence. Security led them out. Harold still shouting threats. Samantha sobbing. The room sat in stunned silence for a moment. Then Patricia Huang did something unexpected. She applauded, slowly. Others joined in. Not everyone. Some board members looked sick, realizing their oversight failure, but enough. Ms. Carter, Patricia said when the noise died down. I believe we owe you a substantial apology, and possibly a job offer, once this mess is sorted. I gathered my materials, hands finally shaking now that adrenaline was fading. Thank you. But I think I'm done with Westford Dynamics. Although, I paused at the door. You'll be hearing from my attorney about wrongful termination. The last thing I saw before leaving was the screen still displaying the Clearwater Solutions logo, $1 million secret finally exposed to the light, burning away the careers of those who thought they could destroy me with impunity. The aftermath unfolded faster than I could have imagined. By that evening, Harold Whitman's mugshot was trending on financial Twitter. Samantha Reyes had been arrested at JFK Airport with a one-way ticket to Costa Rica and $50,000 in cash. The FBI had frozen the Clearwater Solutions accounts, recovering $847,000 of the stolen funds. I sat in Rachel's office, watching the news coverage on my phone, feeling strangely empty. Not disappointed, just hollow. For 3 weeks, revenge had consumed me, driven me, given me purpose. Now, with Harold and Samantha in custody, I wasn't sure what came next. The wrongful termination settlement will be substantial, Rachel said, sliding papers across her desk. Westford's board wants this to go away quickly. They're offering $400,000. $400,000. Enough to pay off my student loans, start over, maybe even take a vacation that didn't involve eating ramen on my couch. But it felt like blood money somehow. Additionally, Rachel continued, the SEC whistleblower reward could be significant. You're looking at 10-30% of what they recover. I signed where she indicated, my mind elsewhere. Through the window, I could see people hurrying along the sidewalk, living their normal lives, unaware that I'd just brought down 2 executives and exposed massive corporate fraud. My phone buzzed. Rebecca. Thought you should know. 7 employees got their jobs back with full back pay. You did that. Then Jason. Drink sometime. On me. Forever. Even Derek texted. Saw the news. You're incredible. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. I deleted Derek's message without responding. 3 days later, I got an unexpected call. Patricia Huang herself. Ms. Carter, I wanted to personally update you. The investigation has uncovered additional fraud going back 3 years. Total theft exceeds $2.3 million. Harold and Samantha are facing 20 years minimum. Good, I said, and meant it. I also wanted to say something else. She paused. In 30 years of business, I've rarely seen such courage. You could have walked away, started over quietly. Instead, you stood up. That takes remarkable strength. After she hung up, I sat in my tiny apartment, looking at the settlement check. It would clear in 3 days. My life would change completely. Yet all I could think about was that Tuesday afternoon, standing on the sidewalk with my pathetic box of belongings, believing my world had ended. Harold and Samantha had thought they were so clever. Fire the troublemaker over a fabricated lunch break violation. Make her disappear. Continue stealing with impunity. They'd never imagined that the woman they discarded like trash would be the one to destroy them. The truth was, they'd been right about one thing. That lunch break had changed everything, just not the way they'd planned. I walked to my window, looking out at the city. Somewhere, Harold was sitting in a federal holding cell, his brother-in-law the judge unable to help him. Somewhere, Samantha was crying to a public defender about how it was all Harold's idea. And somewhere, 7 wrongfully terminated employees were celebrating their vindication. As for me, I wasn't celebrating. This wasn't a victory. It was justice. There's a difference. My laptop chimed with an email from a headhunting firm. Word had gotten out about the whistleblower who'd exposed Westford's corruption. Companies wanted someone with my skills, my attention to detail, and most importantly, my integrity. The girl who'd been fired over lunch was now being courted by Fortune 500 companies. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. Instead, I opened a new document and began typing. This story, our story, needed to be told. Not for fame or sympathy, but as a warning. In every corporation, there are Harold Whitmans and Samantha Reyeses, people who believe their power makes them untouchable. And there are Melissa Carters, too. People who notice when numbers don't add up, who ask uncomfortable questions, who refuse to look away. The difference is what happens when those two forces collide. They'd fired me over a lunch break that ran 13 minutes over, except it hadn't even been that long. They'd tried to frame me for their million-dollar crime. They'd thought I was nobody, disposable, forgettable. They'd thought wrong. I closed my laptop and walked out of my apartment. Not to lunch. That particular anxiety would take years to fade. But to Rachel's office, we had more work to do. Other whistleblowers to help. Other Harolds and Samanthas to expose. Because that's what you do when someone tries to destroy you and fails. You don't just survive. You become the thing they feared most. Someone who knows exactly how the game is played and isn't afraid to flip the board. My name is Melissa Carter. I was fired over a lunch break. And that firing was the biggest mistake Harold Whitman and Samantha Reyes ever made. The $1.2 million secret is out. But the real secret? It's that they created their own worst enemy the moment they handed me that termination letter. Some mistakes, you don't get to walk back. Some people, you don't get to silence. And some lunch breaks, they change everything. Thank you so much for listening to this story of corporate betrayal and ultimate justice. I'm curious to know where in the world you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever witnessed workplace injustice? How did you handle it? Your stories and perspectives make this community special. Until next time. Remember, sometimes the biggest betrayals lead to the greatest comebacks.